Welcome back to the Power Source Podcast. Today's episode is all about something that I think we all wrestle with, trust. Specifically, who do you really trust to be your source? We say things like, I'm self-made, or I've got to grind if I want to make it. But the truth is, everything we have, every opportunity, every open door, every dollar that hits your account and my account comes from one source, and that's our Father God. So my guest today is pastor and author Davon Alexander from True Life Fellowship Church in Matthews, North Carolina. He's a good friend of mine, and he's lived this out both in ministry and in business. His story is proof that when you stay connected to God, you never, ever run out of power or provision. Davon, my friend, welcome to Power Source.
Thank you, Jason. It's so good to be on with you. Thank you for the invitation.
Hey man, it's really great to have you. Listen, I tell people all the time that when I started this podcast, one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to talk to people that the viewers at home may know, but I also wanted to talk to people that I know that I think they should know. And my brother, you definitely fit that bill. You know, I was thinking about this morning. You're one of those calls that a lot of times when I'm driving to work and I'm in my truck, I'll get on the phone with you and we'll chat for 15, 20 minutes just to kind of kick off the day. And today we get to do it through cameras, which is kind of cool.
Yes, that's awesome. I enjoy chatting with you too, man, on those morning calls. So I love you, brother.
Well, listen, success isn't just about hustle. It's about staying connected to the one that makes it all possible. Over the years, you have done a lot of hustling. You've done that in business. You've done that in your church. You're an author. I mean, I've got just some of your books here. Your first book was The True Life Experience, How to Pursue God's Plan and Purpose for Your Life. Great book. You sent me another one here. This is why I tithe, which was another book that you wrote. But you have a new book now, The Hope Switch.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that book.
Well, I feel like because I've been a part of this where maybe I feel forgotten. Maybe you feel forgotten, insignificant, invisible, like you're in a crowded room, but nobody sees you. And so I wrote this book for the hopeless, for those that feel like their plans and their purposes are just not coming into fruition. And so this book will encourage you, will strengthen you. I tell a lot of testimonies about how I felt hopeless, forgotten, and this book will give you the strength to continue, because I believe that your best is yet to come. And so we got to flip that hope switch back on and continue to believe God.
Come on, man. That's great. One of the things that I love about you is the fact that, you're a successful pastor. You've got a great church. You and your wife and your family, you guys are doing a great work there in North Carolina.
Thank you.
But before that, you were someone that was out there in the marketplace. You were really seeing a lot of success. God was really blessing you in business. And, I think a lot of Christians that are out there that aren't maybe called to ministry, but they are called to their marketplace, wherever that is, their job, their home, whatever that case is, they sometimes find themselves hopeless. To your point that you were mentioning about your book, they find themselves in a place where they don't understand why things aren't connecting the way that they thought they would.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like to talk to you a little bit about your story. Tell me how, because you were in ministry, then you kind of stepped out of ministry to get into the business world for a while. Tell me about that.
Well, wow. I think the first word you said is important. It's the word calling. You are invited. You're called to be a part of whatever God has commissioned for you to accomplish, whether that be ministry or business. It is each a calling. And so I was in business. I got my start. I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, and began to work at Panera. Now, you may not think that's a great business opportunity, but it was a start. And you got to start somewhere. Everything starts as a seed. Worked there for a few months and got hired on at a Fortune 500 company, Wachovia Bank. And this is a guy at the time, well, even now, I don't have a degree or anything in finance, but I got hired on at Wachovia. And then in 3 times in 2 years, I got promoted. I started out making $28,500, working 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., which I think is one of the worst shifts, by the way. You
Sure.
lose your morning and your afternoon and evening. But but I got promoted, and the last job I had, making over $120,000 a year in a 3-year period at this bank. And so when you talk about calling, I believe I was called to be a part of this bank.
And that's awesome. And you saw a lot of success while you were there. Obviously, I mean, it was real. You know, you were just talking about how all of the promotions and all of the accolades that you received, but it was something that was a supernatural thing, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
it really was. I mean, no one gets promoted that fast. Plus, what you're describing is I also was the number one sales rep that in the last year I was there on the East Coast for the entire bank. I mean, you're talking about a guy, like I said, doesn't have a degree, didn't have any financial credentials where this is concerned, but the favor of God was upon me and still is upon me, and open doors that no man can shut. And all of that success comes back really to the Lord. I remember one particular time someone asked me, how have you gotten promoted so fast? No one gets promoted that fast. Who do you know? I said, I know the Lord. And they're like, no, 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 no. You know somebody else in the upper echelons of this company. I said, I do not. I know the Lord, and the favor of God's upon me. And I'm going to say one quick nugget where that's concerned, Jason, is I believe that we need to be confessing every single day that today is my day for promotion. I would
Yeah,
say
man.
that every single day. Today is my day for promotion. And if you continue to work hard and give your best and declare the favor of God upon your life, today is your day for promotion. God can get anything to you from anyone, anywhere, at any time. And so I believe just trusting in Him being your source, He knows how to rearrange and change things in our life.
So, one of the things that I want to get into, I mentioned it back when I was doing the intro, is that we live in a society where there's a real push for this hustle culture. You got to do this, you got to do this, you got to make it happen, you got to go. I mean, and while I understand that we do need to hustle at times, we do need to be diligent in our stewardship of our time, and we need to be hard workers. I believe all of that. But there's something in that hustle culture mindset that I think we need to be really careful about, Devon, and that is, I think sometimes we fall into this trap of believing that it's all about what we do and that we're the source of our
Right.
blessing, and
Right.
and that's something that I usually push back on, because look, man, God will let you kick open doors that He never intended for you to open.
Right.
He will. And then what happens is you find yourself outside of His provision because you're doing it in your own strength. And what
Right.
happens when we do it in our own strength? We get burnt out.
Yes.
We get tired.
Yes.
Will we see success? Sure. But it's not the level of success, and it's not with the same attitude that God wants for us. I have a youth pastor, friend of mine, actually the only youth pastor I ever had in my life. And he's still a friend at our church. And he shared his testimony years ago, and I never forgot it. He said, for every major decision in his life, this is how it worked. God would open a door. He would walk through that door. He would be faithful wherever God put him until God opened up another door.
That's it. Mm-hmm.
And I latched onto that, man. I love the thought of just taking all of the stress and all of the pressure and putting it on God, because He
Yes.
can handle it a lot better than I can, right?
Yes.
And so in my life, that's what I've seen happen. When God opens a door and I feel like, man, that's what He wants me to do, whether that be business or work or ministry, it really doesn't matter. He opens the door. We just have to walk through and be faithful. And then when we do that, He blesses our faithfulness.
Absolutely. A faithful man abounds with blessings. And I like to define faithfulness as continuing to do the last thing God told you to do to the best of your ability. If you would just keep doing that and doing it because you are working as unto the Lord and not as unto man, God is going to orchestrate, and He's going to open doors that no man can shut. He's going to give you opportunities that you didn't even think could come your way. And so it's about being faithful. You talked earlier too about you can, become successful in your own endeavors, man, but the blessing of the Lord it maketh rich, it adds no sorrow. I mean, when you have the blessing of the Lord working, there's going to be no sorrow. You kick that door in by yourself, it's going to be a lot of sorrow. You're going to stab somebody in the back. You might lose your family. You might lose your health. You might experience some form of worldly success, but it's going to come with sorrow. But if you'll be faithful and allow the blessing of the Lord to work in your life, there'll be no sorrow with it. And I want to remind you, God's not forgotten about you. Keep doing what he's telling you to do. The last thing he told you to do, just keep doing it to the best of your ability. And the word assures us that we're going to abound and that we are going to ascend and go to other levels in him.
Yeah, man, that's so good. My dad years ago used to use a phrase, and it's not very politically correct, but I love it. He would say, God uses fat people.
Okay.
I was like, all right.
Okay.
But here's this. God uses faithful,
Yes,
available,
yes,
and teachable people.
Oh, I like that.
When we're faithful, when we're available, and when we're teachable, God can use us. Now,
Yes.
I'm going to have to come up with a new acronym to
Yes,
share that,
right.
because I don't want to offend anybody. But
It's
but
true.
it always stuck with me. It worked because it
Yes.
stuck with me. I believe God honors our faithfulness, and the reality is, and this is what I want to get into next. While God promises that we'll be blessed, he doesn't promise that it's always going to be a rose garden.
That's right. That's right.
There are seasons when things kind of don't go the way we thought they should.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for me, and I'm sure for you, there have been times in my life where I was like, man, God, are you there? Are you hearing me? Is like, and you it's easy to question, right?
Right.
So for you, when you've been in those seasons, maybe through business or even in the time now that you've been pastoring, what do you do? How do you handle that?
Well, one is there are two constants in the earth, I believe. The first one, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. That is constant. What you see of him in the New Testament, you see of him today. He is the same. The other constant is change. Change is constant. So in order to continue in him, you must be flexible, adaptable, and adjustable. You're going to have to be able to be pliable, to be mendable and moldable, because what's going to happen is things will change. Seasons will change. You're not always on the cloud nine. You might be in the valley, but understand you're going from through the valley to the mountaintop, right?
Yeah.
And so all things doesn't feel great all the time, and you don't feel like things are working all the time. So you're gonna have to be flexible, adjustable, and adaptable. You got to learn how to pivot. Sometimes you feel like you're going to hit a wall. Maybe I've hit a wall in this industry or in this business or in this opportunity. Learn how to pivot, change your direction, not your purpose, but your direction. I love the example in where the disciples were fishing, right, on one side of the boat, and Jesus said, cast your net on the other side of the boat. That was a pivot, right?
Sure.
And so they pivoted and they did what he said through simple obedience, and the seasons changed. And so I'll encourage people just be flexible, be adaptable, be adjustable. Don't be so attached to wherever it is you are. Understand that it's a process, and you and I are making progress. And as we make progress, don't compare it to anybody else's progress. Are you further along today than you were yesterday? I believe that's success. I believe success is the Lord is with you, and incrementally you're getting further and further along than you were yesterday. That's the goal anyway, and I believe that is success.
Amen. That's great. The funny part about that story with the disciples and the fishes and everything is, if you go under the water, the difference between the right side of the boat and the left side of the boat was maybe 15, 20 feet.
Right, maybe.
Like under the water, man, like you're talking about a very short distance.
Yeah.
So all of the success that they experienced by doing that was totally based on obedience.
Yes.
It wasn't that, you had thousands of fish over here and 5 feet to the left of them, they weren't hanging out at all.
Right.
It wasn't that at all. It was about obedience.
Just
It was about obedience to God, which I think is, a lot of times I think we get too tripped up in our own head. I mean, we get in our own head and we start trying to figure things out on our own. And honestly, I believe that's where the enemy really can attack us, because he wants us to be down. He wants us to be depressed. He wants us to question everything. He wants
Right.
us to question God.
Right.
He wants us to question our decisions.
Right.
I mean, there's so much that he wants to push uncertainty
Mm-hmm.
into our mind, right?
Yes.
And when it comes to business or ministry or whatever, again, this whole thing is about trusting God wherever he's planted you.
Yes.
Because, for the people that are watching, God may have called you to be a stay-at-home mom,
Mm-hmm.
but
That's a
and
calling.
you're that's a calling on your life, and you
Mm-hmm.
want to do that, but you still question, wow, should I be doing this, or should I be working to help my husband? I mean, God always wants us to have the very best, and the devil always wants us to question that.
Right.
Maybe you're a business person, maybe you're a pastor, and you're constantly being bombarded with doubt
Mm-hmm.
and condemnation. We have to push back against that and
Yes.
understand, when we're placed where God put us, when God opened a door and we walked through and we put our roots down there, he is going to bless us more than we could ever ask or think, isn't he, Pastor?
He really is. I'm a living witness of it, that he will bless you more than whatever you ask or think. The key is, what you're saying is obedience, simple obedience. I tell this story in my book, and I think it's applicable to this conversation. I was a brand new employee at Wachovia Bank. On Fridays, they had dress down days, which is simply you could wear jeans and a polo. And who tucks in a polo, right? I used to wear my polo
Right.
out. You shouldn't tuck in a polo. This manager used to walk up to me and say to me, tuck in your polo. Now, he would pass 15 or 20 people to come right up to me and tell me to tuck in your shirt. And I was like, hey, man, I feel like you're discriminated against me, right? Why are you picking me? Why are you singling me out? All these other
Right.
people have their shirt untucked. And he would every Friday, he would come to me and say, tuck in your shirt. One day he said, I'm not going to tell you again, tuck in your shirt. And I drove home, and the Lord spoke to me, and he said, if you can't obey him, you can't obey me. And I said, wow. So I went into his office on Monday and I apologized. I said, you will never have to tell me to tuck my shirt in again. I have been in rebellion and I'm wrong. He said to me, he shut the door. He said to me, you are going places. These other people are not going anywhere, but you are. And I can't let a little rule like tuck in your shirt and you disobey it hinder you from going places. And I think a lot of times he saw something in me, and it, you know my story, 3 times in 2
Yeah.
years I was promoted. He saw something in me. And I think a lot of times we're looking for agreement. Like God tells us to do something, or maybe a leader tells us to do something, and, oh, I don't agree. And I believe the Lord's not asking you to agree. It's great that we can walk together and agree, but we can also walk together when we submit. And there's
Amen.
power in submission, which simply means I don't agree. However, because you said it, I'm going to do it anyway. And I think a lot of our success really comes in submission. I believe it comes in, I don't want to do that, but you said do that, and I'm going to do it. I'm too afraid to. You use the example of or not a single mom, but a stay-at-home mom. Maybe she's working, but she wants to be a stay-at-home mom, and she's being led to leave her job. And you're saying, man, I don't know how we're going to make ends meet. I don't agree I should leave my job because I don't know how we're going to make it. But when you submit to what the Lord is saying, you open up the windows for him to provide for you in ways that you have never fathomed. And so I believe a lot of our success, especially in business, really is in submission, humbling yourself and submitting to the instructions from the Lord. What do you think?
I mean, I totally agree, and I think people need to understand that God's blessing is always going to be better than man's. Uh,
Yeah.
a lot of times we want to compare. Have you ever been in a situation where, like, you had, even in business or at work, where you had 2 options in front of you that generated income, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this one over here actually was going to give you more, but you felt like God was calling you to this one,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't make sense in the natural,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're like, well, this one I'm going to make more money, this one I'm not, but God, I feel like God's talking. But then you make the choice, you go to the one that God had for you, and you end up in such a better place long
Yes.
term
Yes.
because he's guiding your steps, right?
Yes.
I think, again, it goes back to this idea of if you're pursuing wealth, you can get off course. If you're pursuing blessings, if you're
Mhm.
pursuing God,
Yes.
you're never going to be in the wrong place. You're
That's
always
right.
going to be in the right place at the right time.
Absolutely. I mean, Hebrews 11:6. Watch this, says, without faith, it's impossible to please God. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, that he exists. Watch this. And he's a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. I saw this the other day, Jay. He's not a rewarder of them that seek the reward.
Come on, man. That's
He's a
good.
rewarder of them that seek him. And as we seek him, how do we seek him? We listen to him. We make him a priority. We obey him. Then he will reward the diligent that are seeking him. And I think too often we're seeking the reward. We're seeking the wealth. We're seeking the advancement. We're seeking the progress. We're seeking even healing, possibly, right?
Yeah.
When we
Yeah.
should be seeking him and then allow him to do what he does best, and that's reward those that diligently seek him. And so I believe you're right on. As we seek him, he's going to open up the doors, and it's going to be better than we can ever anticipate.
You know, in these last couple minutes here that we have together, I want to talk a little bit about when you transitioned out of the business world into pastoring your church. You know,
Wow.
tell that story, how that came about,
Okay.
and where you guys are now.
Wow, great story. So here I am making six figures, doing very well, #1 sales rep. Enjoyed my job, enjoyed the people I work with, and my pastor came to me and said, "Hey, I have an opportunity for you to come on staff at our church. I believe that you'll be a major blessing." And it was going to be a significant decrease financially to do that. I talked to my wife about it, and the only thing she said was, "Can I still get my hair done if we make this decision?" I
That's
said,
good.
we'll make a way. We'll find a way.
Hey, man, it's all about the priorities. We got to keep our priorities straight.
We got to keep our priorities straight, and we got to keep our lady happy, right? We
Come
got to
on.
keep our lady
Amen.
happy. And so I said, man, we'll make a way. We'll make a way. Well, we ended up leaving. I resigned from that company. They could not believe I was leaving to go into the ministry. I mean, they just couldn't believe it. What ended up happening is when I transitioned to that church ended up closing down. And so what I had to do was, there was always a call in my life to start. I always knew in my heart that I was going to pastor. I didn't know it would be that soon. So we ended up just starting. I mean, we had nothing but a word from God. You know, John 1:1 says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." We just had a word from God get started. We started with a handful of people, a word from God, no equipment, nothing at all. I didn't take a salary for months. And I need to say this, it's important. A lot of times when you're obeying God, make sure that you're handling your finances in the appropriate way so that
Mm.
when God does speak, you can listen. One of the reasons I was able to step away from a six-figure paying job, I didn't have a lot of debt. The only thing we owed was just our home. Everything was paid for. So it was, it was hard, but it was a little easier, right? Because we had taken care of some things. And so in this situation, we start the church, not a lot of debt personally, praise the Lord. I wasn't getting paid, but we just kept going. We kept going, and God beginning to open the doors. I got phone calls from people all over the country saying, "Hey, I hear you starting a church. We want to partner." One guy said, "Man, I want to send you $1,000, every month, and I want it to go towards your house payment." And that, man,
Wow.
that what a blessing. I mean, that would have never happened unless we stepped out, right?
Yeah.
And obeyed God, and we did. And finally, as we just kept going, and we were excited that people were even coming back the next week, and we had a trailer, or before we had a trailer, we had people putting stuff in their cars. So maybe 10 cars had stuff, and we were hoping they would come back the next week to just bring the stuff back so we could have a good service, you know? And so we eventually got a trailer, and eventually we moved from the high school into a building that we're renting. And now currently we're in the process of looking for a new, bigger location to worship the Lord in. And so God's been very faithful. It hasn't been easy, but it's been simple. And the simple part is just hearing and obeying. That's the simple part. And when you hear and obey, He will take care of you.
He will. He will always take care. Having been one of those guys that's started a church from scratch, I remember very vividly those days of trailers and setting up and tearing down and setting up and tearing down.
Yes.
But you know, what's interesting about that is God always sends the right people that have a burden and a calling. We were talking about this the other day. They have a calling to do that. Like, and I really believe that that's something that God puts in them, that there's a servant heartedness, and that becomes their ministry. And that's probably for another podcast down the road. But I think a lot of times what happens with Christians is we fall into this idea that ministry is only what happens behind the pulpit.
Right.
But the reality is ministry is meeting a need in love. And
that's it.
Using your gifts and talents and abilities to honor the Lord. And so I remember those days, man. That was that wasn't easy, but it was very good.
It was, those, and I have a lot of respect for ministries all over the country, even all over the world, that are setting up and tearing down. It is not easy at all, but it is necessary it's biblical. You know, it really is. I mean, the tent, they had to pack that tent up and move it around pretty often, right? And so it is biblical, and I have a lot of respect for it. But God will, if you continue, God will promote you. I'm a living witness of that. He will promote you to a place where maybe you don't have to do that anymore.
Come on, man. That's good. Listen, how can people find out more about True Life Fellowship Church, and how can people order your books?
Awesome. Well, thank you once again, Jason, for having me on the opportunity. True Life Fellowship Church, truelifefc.org is how you can find our church out. Davon Alexander, my first and last name.com is how you can order my books. And you can follow me online, Facebook, Twitter, at Davon M. Alexander. Davon M. Alexander, Instagram. You can follow me online. But check out truelifefc.org, davonalexander.com, and follow me online. I would appreciate it.
My friend, it's always great talking to you. Thank you for joining us this week on Power Source.
Thank you.